Y&R Spoilers Thursday, June 5th reveal the Newman mansion is bathed in the glittering lights of Nikki's birthday party. Everything is meticulously prepared down to the last detail as a silent message about the family's power and status. The sounds of laughter, the clinking of glasses resonate with the melodious melody of the orchestra, but beneath that perfect shell, each person has their own emotions and worries that no one speaks out. For Cole, the recent days are like an unstable symphony as his health is increasingly declining. He feels waves of dizziness, headaches, a heavy feeling in his chest, but still tries to smile, hiding all the fatigue so as not to bother Victoria. He tells himself that everything will pass, that if he just rests more, he will be able to overcome the strange symptoms that haunt him more and more clearly. However, Victoria is more sensitive than anyone. She kept an eye on Cole's every expression, every fleeting frown, every forced shrug, every colder than usual touch. Victoria had grown up in a family where lies and secrets were exposed sooner or later, so she knew what was unusual, no matter how small. When Cole forced a smile to chat with guests, his eyes no longer shining, she felt even more uneasy. Worrying premonitions tormented her endlessly, and what Victoria feared most was the possibility that Cole was hiding a serious health problem from her that he was not ready to share. With each passing second at the party, she became more certain that Cole was on the brink of a storm that she was not mentally prepared to face. Victoria's anxiety was hidden behind the perfect mask of a Newman lady, charming, confident, proud in every gesture. She strode among the guests, exchanging pleasantries, but her eyes were always on Cole's figure. Every time he raised his hand to his forehead as if trying to shake off the headache, every time he paused by the pillar longer than necessary, every time he unconsciously leaned back in his chair, Victoria held back a sigh, her heart tightening. She didn't want to lose Cole, especially now, when between them there were still so many unfinished plans, so many unfulfilled dreams, so many words left unsaid. The climax of all the tension came when the party was at its climax. Nikki, in a gorgeous dress, stood in the middle of the room with a satisfied smile, her eyes sparkling with happiness as Victor handed over the charming bracelet, a gift chosen by Kyle and representing congratulations from the younger generation. Claire was also present, her eyes sparkling with hope that Victor would praise Kyle, say a good word for the bond between the two families. But Victor was still Victor. He kept his cold appearance, his words sharp as always, even on happy occasions he did not reveal the slightest bit of weakness. As he accepted the bracelet, he looked at Kyle with a mixture of scrutiny and suspicion, unable to hide his reluctance to judge the young man's sincerity. The room seemed to quiet down, those who were attentive could clearly feel the coldness, and the warm atmosphere was suddenly covered with a thin layer of ice. In that moment, Cole suddenly felt all the sounds fading away, flashes of light flashed before his eyes, his head was buzzing and his limbs were weak. He tried to calm down, took a deep breath, but the dizziness became more and more intense, sweat broke out on his forehead. Victoria realized something was wrong, hurriedly walked over, just as Cole collapsed in the middle of the banquet hall. A scream tore through the luxurious atmosphere. Victoria screamed for help, her call echoed desperately, tearing at the hearts of everyone present. The guests were stunned, the music suddenly stopped, all eyes turned to Victoria who was trembling and hugging Cole, tears welling up uncontrollably. Nikki was stunned, Victor frowned in annoyance but still rushed over, worry could not be hidden in his experienced eyes. Everything became chaotic, some called an ambulance, some ran to find a doctor, everything that had been perfectly planned now fell apart in a moment. Victoria panicked and tried to calm Cole down, but the more she looked at his pale face and hazy eyes, the more scared she felt. Deep down, Victoria knew that this fainting spell was not random, nor could it be just stress or fatigue as Cole had lied to her. Everything was happening like a harsh wake-up call, forcing her to face the truth she did not want to admit. Cole might have a serious illness, and any attempt to hide it only made the situation more dangerous. The days following the party were a series of endless worries. Victoria did not leave Cole's side, all work plans were put on hold, all she cared about was his health. But Cole tried to hide all the symptoms, continued to reassure her with empty promises about going to the doctor, about just resting for a while and everything would be fine. However, the instinct of an experienced woman made Victoria unable to rest. She began to secretly search for information, consulted familiar doctors, determined not to let her husband face danger alone. And then, the symptoms became more and more obvious. Cole often had insomnia, his weight dropped, his face was pale, and the dizziness appeared more frequently. The more he tried to act strong, the more Victoria worried to the point of near despair. Memories of the past, of losses, of family shocks came flooding back, making Victoria not dare to relax for a moment. She felt like she was fighting an invisible force, an unceasing fear growing in her mind. Every time she thought about the possibility that Cole was hiding his true condition from her, Victoria felt more and more hurt. She didn't know whether to be angry or sympathetic for her husband, because she understood the psychology of strong men. They were afraid of becoming a burden, afraid of the person they loved suffering, afraid of facing their own weakness in front of their relatives. But she also knew that only the truth could help them overcome everything. She convinced Cole to go to the doctor, tried every way to encourage him, even having heated arguments because her anxiety turned into anger. Meanwhile, the echoes of Nikki's birthday party were still echoing everywhere. Nikki was disappointed that the incident happened on her big day, but also felt heartbroken for Cole and Victoria. Claire tried to find a ray of hope when witnessing the chaos, her eyes stopping many times on Victor's cold face. She hoped Victor would soften his heart, would say a word of comfort, but all her efforts were met with a cold shake of the head. Victor not only did not encourage her, but also continued to complain about Kyle, about the insincerity of the younger generation, making the family atmosphere even heavier and more tense. Kyle was confused, not knowing how to face Victor, and even less knowing how to soothe Claire's invisible wounds when she saw her fragile hope being suffocated by the very father she worshipped. After the party, everyone seemed to have their own wounds. Victoria continued to live in constant worry about Cole, having to be a mother, a partner, and an involuntary doctor for her husband. Nikki silently grieved as she saw her children and grandchildren continue to be caught up in endless tragedies. Claire tried to hold on to what was left of hope, while Kyle gradually understood that not all sincere efforts were recognized in this cold world of power. As for Victor, although he still appeared to be a strong father and husband, deep down he could not help but have vague fears, fear that power could not protect the people he loved forever, that things could only change when they knew how to face themselves honestly. In the following nights, Victoria often sat by Cole's bed, holding his hand tightly, listening to his every breath, feeling his every heartbeat. She told herself to be strong, to be resilient like the way she had grown up in the Newman family, but the more she tried, the more she felt small in the face of the storm that was coming. In her eyes, Cole was not only her life partner, but also the only peaceful place in the stormy world. She was willing to trade everything, including power and fame, just to keep Cole by her side, so as not to have to face the loss that life had made her experience too many times. The story of Cole, Victoria, Nikki, Claire, Kyle, and Victor thus continues to swirl in worries, misunderstandings, hopes, and even despair. No one knows what tomorrow will bring, only knowing that each of them will have to face their own truth, learn to let go and accept, or fight to the end for the happiness they always believe they deserve. And then, behind every tragedy, there is still love, hope, and the silent strength that urges each member of the Newman family to overcome all challenges, no matter how high the price. In a stifling and tense atmosphere that enveloped the cold corridors of the Newman house and the luxurious space of the Abbott mansion, the old conspiracies had not yet subsided when a new storm came, this time hitting the pride and youthful illusions that Kyle was harboring. Since the relationship between Kyle and Claire was made public, not a day had passed without both of them feeling the pressure from Victor's giant shadow. Even though they tried to prove their sincere feelings and fiercely defend their choices, Victor still regarded Kyle's every effort as a poor joke, a clumsy act that he did not bother to hide his contempt. Kyle had hoped that with his courage, perseverance, and self-respect as an abbot, he would make Victor reconsider, but the more he tried, the more he encountered the cold, steel-like attitude of the head of the Newman Empire. Even when Kyle decided to bet everything, making the boldest move ever to prove his love for Claire, he still only received mocking looks and indifference from Victor. No matter how persistent Kyle was, no matter how much Claire begged, persuaded, and begged her father to listen, everything still ended with a cold denial and a firm affirmation. There would never be a case of Victor accepting Kyle as part of the family. While Kyle was immersed in disappointment and a feeling of helplessness, Jack was troubled by a deeper worry. He understood Victor's temperament too well, and understood even more that Claire, despite her intelligence and sharpness, was still just a small piece on the Newman family's calculating chessboard. Jack had warned Kyle many times about the unforeseen consequences of confronting Victor directly and Newman's power games. He knew that if the two young people insisted on doing things their way, the outcome would only be pain and humiliation. And then, everything turned out to be true for Jack. When Victor publicly rejected Kyle, when Claire's entire effort went down the drain, it was Jack who felt sorry for his son, both hurt and helpless when seeing Kyle's double failure. Being protected by his lover but also unable to maintain respect from the other party, and being looked down upon by Victor without any respect. Jack's disappointment was not only for Kyle but also for Claire, because he knew that these injuries would last, haunt and could cause a rift within his own family. Claire, meanwhile, could not hide her deep sadness. She had believed that she was strong enough to turn things around, to make Victor soften and acknowledge her love for Kyle. But when faced with the harsh reality, Claire understood that Victor's pride was greater than anything, and nothing, not even father-son love, could change him. She was disappointed, desperate, feeling that all the hope she had built up suddenly turned into nothing. In that moment, Claire realized that she had not only failed Victor but had also unintentionally pushed Kyle into a situation where there was no way back. Between forbidden love on one side and a powerful family with cold rules on the other, Claire seemed to be standing on the edge of an abyss where every step could lead to an irreversible tragedy. In another corner of the city, Michael Baldwin was immersed in internal conflicts that only those who had stood between duty and emotion could understand. After recent events, Michael agreed to give up his role as Victor's personal lawyer. A decision that seemed strong and decisive, but in fact made him feel uneasy. The image of his late father always appeared in his dreams, reminders of honor and responsibility, making Michael even more confused at the turning point of his life. Lauren, the woman who had shared many ups and downs with him, of course clearly felt this insecurity. She knew that if Victor once again unleashed his temptations of power, Michael would be drawn into a spiral of no escape. Lauren tried to reassure her husband, reminding him of the hurt and danger that had happened when Michael rushed into Victor's world, but Michael could not be as decisive as he said. Deep down, he was still tormented, still wanted to prove himself once again, even though he knew that the price to pay could be the happiness of his family, his own soul. In the following days, the atmosphere between the families became increasingly tense. Every look, every gesture contained unspoken hidden meanings. Kyle became more and more withdrawn, he was no longer as confident as before and began to doubt his own choice. The dreams of a romantic life, where love was capable of erasing all boundaries, were now just a painful obsession. He did not know if he had enough strength to stand firm between the two fronts. On one side was the father who had wholeheartedly protected him, on the other side was the woman he loved but was trapped in her father's vortex of power. As for Claire, every time she saw Victor's cold eyes, she felt more desperate, more and more wondering if she could overcome her father's huge shadow, or if she would forever be just a puppet in his predetermined game. Meanwhile, Victor continued his game of power coldly, not showing any signs of weakness or regret. He knew Kyle's every move, understood Claire's wishes, but still refused to change his decision, even when faced with resistance from his own daughter. For Victor, the family always had to adhere to unchangeable principles, and anyone who dared to disobey would pay a heavy price. In his eyes, Kyle was never worthy of Claire, and Claire was just being delusional because of a temporary, frivolous feeling. The advice and warnings from Jack or anyone else were just faint echoes in Victor's ears. A man who was too used to deciding everything for himself, regardless of the feelings of others. On the other side, Jack, even though he was proven right, could not feel any joy or relief. Because for him, this victory was actually just a painful warning. The child's wounds would become a ghost that haunted the whole family for the rest of their lives. Jack understood that all his advice and protection could not stop Kyle's emotional storm, nor could they make Claire give up her first love. The only thing he could do was to stay by his son's side, silently watching and waiting until Kyle was strong enough to rise from his own brokenness. Michael and Lauren faced silent battles in their hearts, where every passing moment was a struggle between love, honor, and fear of loss. Lauren tried to be strong, always reminding Michael of the value of family, but she could not control her insecurity when she clearly felt her husband's wavering. As for Michael, although he had reassured Lauren many times, deep inside him was a whirlwind of doubt and a desire for affirmation. Sometimes, he wonders if he should give up everything, abandon all responsibilities to live for himself, or continue to engage in endless wars, where loyalty can become a trap that swallows all aspirations of freedom. All these changes create a chaotic vortex, where no one can predict the outcome. What will Kyle do when the whole world turns its back on him? Will Claire dare to go against her father to keep her love? Is Michael strong enough to cut off all ties with Victor, or will he fall deeper into the endless vortex of power? And Jack, can he keep his faith in family values when everything around him is gradually collapsing? Those questions still hang in the air, waiting for a new storm to come, sweeping away all the remaining dreams, love and pride that have been damaged.